And talking about the historical connections of this area, and obviously, you know, if you include Greenwich, and we are very much in the borough of Greenwich, they're extraordinary. But not just Greenwich, Woolwich itself, I mean, particularly with the Arsenal, and I don't mean the football team, although we might come on to that, has an incredible historical story to tell. And maybe the man sitting opposite me can help us do that. He's Ian Ball, and he gives local history walks around this part of South East London. Ian, as I say, you've got to welcome me rather than the other way around, because I'm very much the visitor and tourist down here. And I have to say, it is the first... I mean, I've been to Charlton to go and watch football matches, because my team used to play them on a regular basis when we were in the same division. But these... other than that, I don't know this part of the world, and I've never been to the Woolwich Arsenal. Shame upon me.
Well, welcome, and it's not a bad area at all, actually, and strangely enough, I don't come from round here either.
So you're an import as well?
I am. I'm an imposter. I'm from Battersea. But the walks that I lead for Walk London, the walking organisation of the Mayor's office, has brought me here on very many occasions, and I thought, what a fascinating place. I walked into the local history museum, the Greenwich Heritage Centre, a few years ago, and there on the wall was a huge map of the Royal Arsenal, and I could hardly believe what I was looking at.
What, just the scale of it?
Oh, the sheer size. It was 3¼ miles long. It covered 2 square miles altogether.
Wow.
And as I think the Mayor may already have told you, at one point it employed just over 100,000 people.
That's incredible, isn't it? 100,000 people employed in the Arsenal.
Yes.
When would that have been? Are we sort of First World War period?
Yes, that's the peak of the First World War. It was 79,000 civilians working within the Arsenal, further 20,000 within the surrounding streets, and on top of that you would have had the military contingent. So you're comfortably over 100,000 there.
And I guess, I mean, the Arsenal obviously did what it did. It made munitions and it made arms, I guess.
Yes, that's what it did through its entire life. From it started theoretically in about 1571, but in reality the area had been used for military purposes, gun testing, for instance, before that.
Is the proximity to the river important for
Yes,
that?
very important. The Arsenal's 2 great advantages were that it had easy shipping access. It was very close to the Woolwich Royal Naval Dockyard, which opened in 1515, and was in close communication, or easy communication, with the dockyard at Deptford and also at Chatham and Sheerness.
I guess in both directions you've got naval history all around you, haven't you? Because obviously Greenwich with the Royal Navy there and an absolute centre. But as you say, going out towards the estuary and Chatham and the Royal Naval Dockyards there. So you're in the very kind of centre of the British naval tradition, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. But the Arsenal wasn't only a naval establishment, it was also extremely heavily connected with all the services, the Army and the Air Force in its later days.
So this area that we're in now, would it have grown up as a sort of a hinterland to the Royal Arsenal?
Very much so. It was by far the largest employer. I doubt if you'd find any family that's been in South East London for more than, say, 2 generations who hasn't had a relative working in it. It was by far the biggest employer and continued to be that for a very, very long time.
And it was almost like a closed area. It was a sort of a walled city, wasn't it?
Yes, the local name was the Secret City.
Really?
And with good reasons too, because the work it did was in certain areas very, very confidential. It did develop a large amount of the development work on the atomic bomb was done there, and the security was extremely tight. In fact, in the words of a friend of mine who unfortunately can't be here today, you couldn't have got a biro out of the place.
Is that Ray, who was going to be joining
us?
Yeah, because he'd been working there since before the Second World War.
Yeah, he spent his entire working life there, and through the Arsenal's Historical Society, I think we can say that he still is. But unfortunately, possibly not too well to do that today.
Now, we keep saying the Arsenal, and there will be people up in North London whose ears prick up every time they hear that, I guess, thinking we're discussing their football team.
Yes.
What is the relationship of Arsenal and this area?
Well, the relationship with the football team is that the Arsenal had a foundry, a gun-making foundry, one of many, in fact, and they imported some specialist iron founders from County Durham. Well, these chaps brought football with them. And
so we've got Northerners to blame.
Well, that's correct, actually. They wanted to start a football team in the Arsenal, and they did so with, as we know, very, very great success. And funnily enough, the building where they founded it is still there today, and it's now a pub.
Is there a plaque or anything, I wonder?
Yes, there is. Right
actually.
Outside the pub's front door, there is a little plaque to explain that this is where Arsenal Football Club was founded.
Hence the cannons on their badge and all of that.
Yes, exactly.
And there are, I believe, I mean, certainly Fable has it up in North London, because I live, very close to Arsenal. There are still a few supporters who've always supported them from down in this area and go up to the games.
I'm absolutely sure that's the case, yes. I think it's either Charlton or it's Arsenal, one or the other. I mean, the ties go back a very long way. So it's just, before they went to Highbury, for instance, they played on Plumstead Common.
Right.
I'm not much of a football expert.
No, but in terms of the history, that's it is a fascinating part of this world.
Indeed.
What happened to the Arsenal in terms of its decline? Why did it decline?
The decline really came in during the First World War. Because of the invention of aerial bombardments.
Right.
Luftwaffe aircraft were able to come here and bomb the Arsenal with success during the First World War up until that
Even
time.
in the First World War,
in
they
the
were
First
bombed.
World War.
So that wasn't
yeah.
Zeppelin raids. That was
no, it was aircraft actually.
Right. Because we always associate that, of course, with the Battle of Britain or then the Blitz and the Second World War.
Yes.
But it happened in the First World War as well.
Yeah. It was the aerial bombardment in the First World War that led the authorities to realise that here you had a large military establishment with all the eggs in one basket, with up to 20,000 tonnes of high explosive in it in London. And it was decided very rapidly that it had to be dispersed. And the rundown began almost immediately after the First World War, and it continued right up until 1967, when the Arsenal stopped manufacturing its last.
So that was when the last kind of munitions and that would have been manufactured.
Right. Yeah. It was making Centurion tanks, repairing Centurion tanks, and also manufacturing munitions up until that date.
Because it certainly got bombed again, even more, didn't it, in the Second World War?
Yes. In fact, a large part of the Arsenal's equipment was moved out for a while because of the fear that too much destruction would be done.
Had there been accidents before that? Because there must have been it must have been certainly great worry if you were living nearby, I would have thought.
Overall, the Arsenal had a remarkably good safety record. There were really very few accidents over the years, considering the enormous tonnage of high explosives that it manufactured. I mean, it made literally billions of rounds of ammunition in the First World War. Although accidents through explosions were very rare, it's probably worth pointing out that many of the munitions workers during the First World War did suffer quite badly from ingesting nitric acid.
Was it sulphur or nitric acid?
It's nitric acid fumes, right. And particularly amongst the female workforce who were mainly used on shell filling, and they did suffer very badly as a result.
Now, tell me about the steam locomotive and your campaign for that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. The Royal Arsenal in its 2 square miles once had 130 miles of railway line.
What?
Yeah, 100...
In 2 square miles, that's 130
right.
miles of line?
It was the densest railway network we ever had in this country, and it had... Not only did it have main line gauge, like every other line in the country, it also had little railways with rails just 18 inches apart.
So little narrow gauge railways.
That's right. And because they could go around...
Was that moving equipment around, moving the munitions and all of that?
Absolutely everything. They'd be used like forklift trucks or conveyor belts, and they went to literally every workshop. Every workshop
and these would have been steam locomotives.
Yep,
the steam must have been extraordinary.
Oh yes, even inside the buildings, they had about 80 working at any one time, and they worked 24 hours a day, not only on goods but also on passengers. Well, one of them survives.
Wow, what sort of gauge? What's still there?
It's an 18-inch gauge one. Right. There were 2 standard gauge ones elsewhere in the country, but a couple of months ago we brought back the last 18-inch gauge one to this area for restoration, and the Royal Arsenal Railway will come back. It's
You seem confident of this.
I am. I'm completely confident of it. It's such a good project, I can't see it failing. It's at the Crossness Pumping Station, which is right next door to the Arsenal, but at the other end, out in Bexley.
Right.
And that's probably, but it is the finest Victorian pumping station in the United Kingdom and one of our best Victorian landmarks.
It's absolutely beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's remarkable. Yeah. And they have plenty of room and facilities for locomotive restoration, and so the locomotive is there, and it's currently being taken to bits, and once we've restored it, back together again, and then it will start running.
I was going to say, start running where and for whom?
Well, it's going to be running initially in the rather extensive grounds of Crossness Pumping Station.
Right.
But we have cast an imaginative eye outside I'm afraid I can't at the moment say exactly what the possibilities might be.
But you could be getting... let me envisage the scene. You could potentially be getting a train from the Woolwich Arsenal up to the Crossness Pumping Station or something.
Well, that would be lovely, wouldn't it?
It would.
It would, yeah. It's a very good idea. If people are listening, it's a very good idea, isn't it?
When do you think in any form whatsoever that the train will make its first
give
journey?
us 18 months to 2 years.
Okay.
Because we have to take the locomotive spoiler out, and it may need extensive repairs. We hope not. But we've got some very good engineers, and even some botters like me.
Ian, if people want to come on one of the tours, where can they find out more?
Right, if you want to find out more about the walking tours that go on in this area, the place to go is walklondon.org.uk or greentrain.com. Now, the Green Train Walk is the principal footpath network in this area, and Walk London offer walks on it every few months, and the next ones are over the 24th and the 25th of September. They are also doing about 48 other walks across London. The website will be showing those walks from the middle of August.
And I can't imagine them getting a better guide than Ian Bull. Ian, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Robert.